Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, Nebraska Colorado roster battle. Going through these two teams' depth charts, position group by position group, stacking these two teams up. Before we get into it, two prerequisites. One, let it fly in the comment section. We're going to say some stuff you guys agree with, disagree with. Let us have it in the comment section. Go engage with the opposing fan base. That's really been the beauty of doing these roster battle episodes. Really, that's just the beauty of college football in general. Number two, and to be clear, this is not necessarily us getting up here and making predictions of the outcome of the game, right? We're not going to talk about matchups. We're going to look at that later on in the summer. This is one of those games that we're going to look at from a ton of different angles over the next couple months. One of the ones that we've had circled for a very long time as college football fans. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's really been a blast taking deep dives into all of these programs, and the amount of support you guys have shown the fellas, it truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Make sure you let it fly in the comment section. And Dylan, I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. Just look at the quarterback room. Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Rhule. How are we feeling?
I mean, I don't know how you can pick against Shedeur right now. And you got to be excited for Nebraska, I should say, and what Dylan Rhule is going to be. Feels like you kind of got your guy to bring you back to prominence. But the way Shedeur Sanders played last year in pretty tough circumstances, given the offensive line play, I just don't see how you can pick against him. Does a really good job not making a ton of mistakes, but also can push the ball down the field and play aggressive and make those big-time NFL throws. I just thought the way he played last year was obviously really, really good. And I'm not really saying anything new here, but I just don't know how you can.
Shedeur Sanders doesn't get enough credit for making those big-time NFL throws. I think a lot of people say, all right, yeah, he only threw, 3 interceptions last year, takes care of the football. You turn back on the film in 2023. I mean, some really high-level throws into tight windows. Most importantly, he's just a gamer. Like, when the moment's the biggest, he's playing his best. And I think that's such an important attribute to have at that quarterback position. You have to go with Shedeur Sanders. He's one of my top quarterbacks in the country heading into 2024. Going to the wide receiver room, I'll start off with this. I think Nebraska made some massive additions to this pass catcher. I thought it was a real problem in 2023. You bring in a guy like Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nayer. You have some young cats that are going to step up. If you're a Nebraska fan, just like the quarterback room, you feel really good about this wide receiver room taking that step in 2024. I'll look at this Colorado wide receiver room and just say there is so much explosiveness and playmakers in this room. You look at the transfer, Will Sheppard, coming in from Vanderbilt. Nobody's talking about this kid. He was one of the better wide receivers in the SEC, but just because he played at Vanderbilt, nobody knows his name. You look at Travis Hunter, one of the best players in all of college football, Jimmy Horn Jr. We know what he can do. If you watch the Colorado spring game, LaJohntay Wester is going to be a guy for this Colorado offense. You bring in Draylon Miller, one of my favorite freshmen coming in that 2024 class. I look at that pass catcher room for Colorado and say, so much playmaking, so many different ways you can attack opposing defenses. You got to go Colorado in this wide receiver room.
Yeah, I lean Colorado. I do think it's a little bit closer than maybe you think it is. I think Jamal Banks, again, you talk about Will Sheppard getting overshadowed by playing in a small program. Jamal Banks very much in the same boat. I think he's way better than people think he is. I think Isaiah Nayer has the potential to give them that explosiveness that was dearly missing last year. I think you like the way Jalen Lloyd played in the spring. You have high hopes for a guy like Malachi Coleman too. I just think Colorado's got so many more proven explosive weapons that puts them over the edge. And they have guys like Amarian Miller and Jimmy Horn, arguably, who can play that possession wide receiver role and do those things that you need wide receivers to do, play in and play out. So I just like the way Colorado's wide receiver room is constructed. And for Nebraska, you're just making a lot of projections, frankly, right now.
Yeah, you go to the running back room, and this is where I'm going to catch some heat in the comment section. I already know it because I know Colorado fans are very high on Dallin Hayden. I know Colorado fans are very high on Rashad Amos. I'm very high on those running backs. I look at this Nebraska running back room and just say, I feel a little bit better about not only the depth of the Nebraska running back room, but more importantly, the different skill sets. And that's something I really look at when I'm looking at running back rooms heading into a season. They got guys that can do different things. You talk about the hammers, Dante Dowdle, Gabe Irvin Jr., thick lower halves, can go between the tackles. Then you have guys like Ramir Johnson, Emmett Johnson, who can operate a little bit more in space. I think these are two solid running back rooms. I look at Nebraska, and you got versatility, but you also have depth. I don't know if you totally have that in the Colorado running back room, so I'm going to go Nebraska. I have a feeling you're going to fight me, and I'm going to catch some heat in the comment section.
And I agree with you from that standpoint. Like, you just feel a little better about diverse skill sets in the Nebraska room. Cause again, you look at what Colorado has, it's running backs, like kind of pure running backs, if you will. You don't have a ton of receiving threat, losing Dylan Edwards in the portal. And I do think that's kind of important because obviously Colorado is going to want to throw the ball. And why wouldn't you when you have Shadur? But I do think you have the edge in terms of proven production in probably that top end talent. I think that's where Nebraska fans will be arguing with me. Dante Dowdle, I think we both really like what he might be, but I think Dallin Hayden is proven to be really, really good. You go back to his true freshman year, big time year at Ohio State when Travion Henderson was down for a period. I like what he has. I think he's probably the best running back on this field. And I think bringing in Amos gives you the depth you are going to certainly be missing if you didn't have it, losing the other guys. So I'll go Nebraska or Colorado by a hair. But I do think what you kind of made an important point that Nebraska probably does have a better or a more diverse set of skills.
Dallin Hayden, just to kind of echo you with Dallin Hayden, we got some Ohio State buddies, and Dallin Hayden was a guy they were really excited about. Like what he did as a true freshman, didn't get the opportunities as a sophomore. For Colorado fans, I think you got a good one in Dallin Hayden. I know a lot of Ohio State fans were really excited about him. Dill, going to the offensive line, 2 units for both programs that I think get a lot better heading into 2024. I'm going to go with Nebraska. I'm going to give Colorado their flowers first. And I think Colorado brought in Power 5 starting caliber offensive linemen. They didn't have that last year. But my question with Colorado is you have 5 new offensive linemen. Are they going to be able to gel immediately in the 2024 season? I really do like the personnel that Colorado has. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Jordan Seaton coming in as a true freshman. But I look at this Nebraska offensive line and say, these guys have all played so much football together within this program. And I think you saw them with your own eyes get better during that 2023 season, which you didn't see under the Scott Frost era. For that reason, I'm going to go with this Nebraska offensive line. But similar to what I said about the Nebraska wide receiver room, I think Colorado's offensive line gets a lot better heading into 2024.
Yeah, and I'd almost echo you word for word. I just think that continuity is so important. And you're kind of right. When you see Nebraska develop the way they did over the course of the year where they started, you were like against Minnesota, you're like, oh, dear God, this is not a good unit. And by the end of the year, they're playing really, really good. They bring in Mike Mazakua. I think that was a big portal ad. I think he's a really good player from Florida, obviously. But just to keep such a big chunk of that unit together, along with the fact that I think you very much believe in the development, I think that's kind of why I lean Nebraska. Because again, with Colorado, it's 100% projection. You just
one thing I'd point out. One point that I'd point out with the continuity. You've seen a lot of elite offensive lines have that. Like you go back to Michigan last year, pretty much returned their whole offensive line, and they were one of the best units in the country. I think that is a lot of times us as college football fans. I'm not even going to call myself an analyst. Certainly not that. You look at offensive lines and say, oh, I like the personnel a lot. And then you sometimes forget that offensive line position, you need some continuity. You need some gel. That's my question I have for Colorado. Dill, moving on to the defensive line. I think I have a hot take here. So I'm going to kick it to you first. Colorado, Nebraska on the defensive line. Who you got?
Yeah, I think to me it's got to be Nebraska simply because I think those 2 guys in the middle are arguably as dominant of a group in the middle as you'll see. I think that Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, so good, so disruptive, really hard to run on. And frankly, to me, I think there's part of me that's really believing in what some of these young guys can be. I think Prince Will You can very much be possibly the best edge rusher on this field because I saw the flashes from last year of that athleticism, that twitchiness, that like pure pass rush instinct, I think was huge. I think it rounds out what Nebraska has. You think of guys like Cameron Leonard and Riley Van Poppel, if they make those strides that you're starting to see guys make in the Nebraska program, I think this can be a really, really good defensive line on the national level.
So my take on this is I'm going to go Nebraska because I think that unit was just so good last year. They returned so many of those guys, and it really does start with Nash and Ty. As Michigan fans, you think about Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. How many other interior defensive line duos are better than Nash and Ty Robinson coming back in 2024? I don't think it's that many. I'm going to go Nebraska. Dill, you look at this Colorado defensive line, very similar thing about the offensive line. They brought
power 5 guys, and they
didn't have that last year. You look at Deion Hayes was probably the best. They brought over both of Pitt's best pass rushers come to Colorado. One of the best pass rushers in the Pac-12, BJ Green, probably would have been a day 3 NFL draft pick. He comes to Colorado. I worry a little bit about the numbers inside in terms of the quality depth that they have. And because of that, I lean Nebraska.
But even there, guys like Torian Carter is a good player.
Good ball.
You sleep on him coming from Arkansas. Like, that guy was a good player. I thought
Started multiple games in the SEC. I don't feel great about taking.
I love Nebraska. I guess I just love Nebraska's defense. I think those two are so good, but
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like, Colorado has a power 4 looking off defensive line, which again, you just couldn't say that last year.
Going to the linebacker room, probably the weakest part of both teams' defenses, I would personally say. So you look at Nebraska, I'm going to go Nebraska. Javin Roy, I know that's your guy, so I'm going to let you cook on him in just a little bit. You look at Colorado's linebacker room, I think you feel better about adding a guy like Nikhai Hill-Green, who I've been pretty vocal. I do like having a lot of familiarity as a Michigan linebacker in the past. Wait, to make clear, I was not a Michigan linebacker. Nikhai Hill-Green was a linebacker, not me, but have a lot of familiarity with Nikhai Hill-Green. Yeah, sorry, 5'8", 160. I was not a linebacker for the Michigan Wolverines. I'll lean Nebraska just because I really do like Javin Wright. I think John Bullock is a little bit underrated, as well as the former walk-on. Stephon Thompson coming over from Q is kind of that chess piece. It's tight. I think it's both position groups that both fan bases have some question marks, but I'm going to go Nebraska.
Yeah, and to me, I go Nebraska simply because I think Javin Wright is that one guy who looks like a real bona fide pro to me. I think people haven't caught up to what he is yet because he started kind of unsure of where they were going to play him. It almost felt like in the Tony White defense, was playing some edge, was playing some other spots. Once he kind of took hold at that off-ball linebacker, I thought he had a really good year, really long, good athlete, can take on blocks effectively. And I just don't know who your like pro is in the Colorado linebacker.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what to me separates a little bit. Like, you like the guys you bring in. Nikhai Hill-Green, like that's a Power 5 starting linebacker. I just don't know that you have that guy who you look at and he's like that difference maker in that room, if you will.
Going to the back end, I think probably the strengths of both of these programs in the secondary, I'm going to go Colorado. And Nebraska fans are going to give it to me in the comment section. I totally understand it. You look back at the numbers, that Nebraska secondary was one of the better units in all of college football. I look on paper at this Colorado secondary and say it's so good. Obviously, Travis Hunter playing both ways. A guy like DJ McKinney coming from Oklahoma State, one of the more underrated transfer portal. I was doing watching back some Oklahoma State. I was like, this kid can absolutely play. You bring in a guy like Preston Hodge, who I've been absolutely banging the table for as well. I think you have obviously some solid safeties with Shiloh Sanders back there. I think you got some real NFL talent at the cornerback position. I'm going to lean Colorado. I know Nebraska fans are going to give it to me in the comment section. I probably do deserve it. Dill, who you got here?
I'm going to go Nebraska simply because I think there are too many games where Colorado was really shaky in that back end. You think like that Oregon game, that's like Stanford can't be throwing for that many yards on you. They're just not that good of a passing offense. And you look at what Colorado, they were just super solid for the most part all year. I love what they're bringing back, that pretty much that whole unit. I mean, they lose a guy, obviously Newsome at that corner spot, but for the most part, bring back a lot of guys. And I think that's huge, frankly, in that Tony White defense. And you can probably say the same thing in Colorado, but they're probably going to be playing with a bit of a different scheme. I think having that year 2 in the Tony White scheme, it's huge for Nebraska. I thought they played at a higher level last year. I'm going to trust in the development of Tony White, but I think you are right. That is kind of the question, because the parts of Colorado are really, really good. And that's like the puzzling part of last year is why was it not necessarily playing good enough on the field at times?
The only thing
they didn't have the moments, but
the only thing I'd push back on, like the just using kind of their evaluation of the performance, is Nebraska's playing in the Big Ten West. You ain't seeing that many passing attacks. You go to Colorado, you're looking at Bo Nix, you're looking at Caleb Williams. So Colorado did see a lot more dynamic passing attacks than you saw at Nebraska. But I do see where you're coming from, where like you wanted to see more consistency. You want to see more consistency from that whole Colorado team at times in 2023. I think you might get that in 2024, year 2 under Coach Prime Dill. This game is going to be absolutely phenomenal. We're going to break it down from so many different angles. Really excited about this one. The boys might be in Lincoln for that game, so we'll have to try to see if we can schedule something up. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.